Kilvinsky's law states, treat everybody the same, white, black, brown. Be civil to everyone, courteous to nobody. That's just a little philosophy lesson I give free to every rookie I'm breaking in.
12-20, Roger.
Remember, these dudes out here aren't afraid of that badge or gun. Matter of fact, they try to shove that badge up your ass just to say they did it. You know, all that Hollywood crap about the karate expert and a one-punch cop is a lot of Hollywood crap. Right.
You've been fed, so you can't complain anymore.
Now I'm kind of sleepy from eating so much.
I only got 3 hours sleep last night, so I'm revving and raring to go.
All right.
Welcome to Lost and Found and Rewound, where we just watched the police officer equivalent of the Lords of Flatbush. I am Chris Lost.
I'm Found Jim.
And I'm Lord Great Chamberlain Rick Rewound.
Lord Great Chamberlain.
Yes.
Oh, I missed that reference. Was he a Centurion?
Oh, man, I should have thought of a Centurion title. Like, what do they call Centurions? Do they have...
Officer Mike?
I should have said officer. Can we do it again?
Sure. I'm Chris Lost.
I'm Found Jim.
And I'm Sergeant Rick Rewound.
Took the exam, did you?
Yeah.
Well, we just watched a phenomenal film about police officers. Rick, would you like to provide a synopsis of the film for us?
I'll do what Jim did. Policeman Joseph Wambaugh's nationwide best-selling novel about the precarious, unyielding, and complex existence. I can barely read this. It's not because I can't read. It's because I can't. I feel like I'm talking as if I've lost my ability to read, but I cannot read this.
Isn't that what happened to Jim, too? He couldn't read the box either.
Like, did people in their 50s not rent movies in the old days? And why are these boxes so hard to read? I got to clean my glasses.
No, the teenagers would rent movies like the new Centurions and take them home and be excited about them.
We watched the new Centurions, Policeman Joseph Wambaugh's nationwide...
Nationwide, really?
Policeman Joseph Wambaugh's nationwide best-selling novel about the precarious, unyielding, and complex existence of the big city cop bursts with searing realism as it is brought masterfully to the screen. The story centers around two cops, Kilvinsky, played by George C. Scott, a veteran officer terrified as he contemplates the uninspired emptiness of retirement, and Failer, played by Stacy Keach, the young cop whose job comes before everything, including his wife, as he thrives on the danger and death that are his daily routine. The life of a cop is the only life they know, the only life they want. A brilliant supporting cast adds to the film's stinging impact. The New Centurions is a movie that reaches beyond the usual police drama, a film that brings a new meaning to the word cop.
Wow.
It does do that. And the reason why I called it the Lords of Flatbush of police officer films is that it has everybody in it.
Yeah.
Stacy Keach, George C. Scott,
Eric Estrada.
Clifton James, famous for his appearances in the Roger Moore James Bond films, the first two Roger Moore James Bond films.
Isabel Sanford, a.k.a. Louise Jefferson.
Oh, yeah.
Clifton James, a.k.a. the country sheriff.
I just said that.
Oh, did you? Okay, sorry.
James Bond. He was
in James Bond, yeah.
And the Last Detail. He's definitely right. He's in the Last Detail.
Cool Hand Luke.
What was Isabel Sanford? Who was she?
She was the main prostitute at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. She was fantastic.
Reno, Nevada from Buckaroo Banzai. Fritz from What's Up, Doc? The hotel
right. And TJ
manager
from Magnum PI.
Magnum PI. William Atherton from Real Genius and Ghostbusters.
James Sicking.
Yeah, James B. Sicking, which is what he was later, but in this he's not even Jimmy Sicking, he's James Sicking from
Hill Street Blues.
Yeah.
Smoking a pipe in this as well.
Yeah. It's basically the same character. Yeah, except he's a vice cop, so he's not wearing his like SWAT uniform.
Yeah.
And then Rosalind Cash, who was in Omega Man, that's what I remember her from. But
was she the love interest in Omega
Yeah.
Man? Because I was going to make that comment. Is that here's another film where you have an interracial couple that seemed progressive.
Yeah.
For the time that the film came out.
Mm-hmm. She was in Buckaroo Banzai as well. That's what you're going to say.
Yeah, that's what you said. Yeah. She's one of the alien overlord people. The genre now, I'm going to call it, is just that guy movie. It's a that guy movie. Oh, there's that guy.
You mentioned Scott Wilson, right?
Scott Wilson. Yeah, did you mention Scott Wilson?
I didn't mention Scott Wilson.
Scott Wilson, yeah.
Who
was
in Cold Blood and The Right Stuff.
Yeah.
That's the main things I remember him from.
And Exorcist 3. So that's what's weird is it was really like, oh, Scott Wilson's in Exorcist 3. And then it's like, oh, George C. Scott is in Exorcist 3. Mm-hmm. So they must have been buddies.
Yeah.
And is Scott Wilson also in the other William Peter Blatty movie? What's that called? The Keep? Have you guys seen The Keep? I feel like Scott Wilson's in that too. Huh. We talked about it during Exorcist 3 because it seems like everybody who was in Exorcist 3 was also in The Keep, except for George C. Scott.
Well, they're all buddies. They must be. Yeah. So my question was, did this film invent or just compile all the cop tropes? And then I sort of had this revelation that I think Walter Hill drew a lot of influence from this film. Although Walter Hill may have had something to do with it. You never realize like how long Walter Hill's been making movies. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
He used to work with Peckinpah. The whole White Russian thing, I don't know if there's a connection there, but like Eddie Murphy orders a White Russian in 48 hours, and that's the joke. The racist bartender goes, "Don't you mean a black Russian?"
Right.
The prostitutes drinking White Russians in the meat wagon was just amazing.
Yeah, and then Stacy Keach, it's just he just starts drinking it because of that night. Do you think maybe that was the joke? It's like almost the next scene he's drinking. Yeah,
Cuddy Sark.
Yes, scotch and pouring milk into it, and it's like I bet it's just that's kind of not a joke, but it was like, oh, that looks pretty good. I'm going to try that at home after that night.
Right, yeah, he goes home and just pulls it out of the bookcase from his wife, yeah.
1972, so it's that transition from Dragnet, right, and Adam 12 to, and Joseph Wambaugh, his more kind of realistic or darker portraits of cops. Yeah, this is one of the, so yeah, it is all the tropes that basically continued through the 70s, right?
Yeah, the rookie who is in a moment of fright shoots an innocent man, the cop who comes home to his wife, she wakes up to be with him, and she turns the corner, and he's passed out on the couch. Mm-hmm. The White Russian, of course, is a common trope. Yeah, there was all those moments, and I was like, is this where these started, or is this somebody assembling these into one film?
I think it's the greatest hits, but not before they were hits. I think this is kind of the like the Cars first album, right? It's a movie like that where they put everything in it. A perfect first album, so it's the perfect first 70s cop movie, but I don't think it's a perfect movie is the problem. You know, right. It's not the classic, but it is kind of, it seems like it has everything. Did we mention Eric Estrada?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Eric Estrada, yeah. There's a term for that. So when we were in college, Scott and I think I've told the story before, we were indie rock guys, and this girl we knew had Boston One, and we'd never listened to the first Boston record. And we listened to it, and every song on it was an absolute hit. And we go down, a couple pretentious indie rock guys go down to the cafeteria, and we sit down there with this guy who's like red haired and has a mullet and grew up in Missouri his whole life, you know, and like, man, have you heard the first Boston record? Like every fucking song on it is amazing. And he goes, yeah, man, it's a fucking greatest hits album. We're like, yeah. So that was the new term for anybody who put out an album that was just wall to wall hits, all like hits. Back in Black. Yeah. You know, it's just a fucking greatest hits album. It was a greatest hits movie, but you're right. It wasn't an A+ movie, but I liked it.
Okay, Chris. No.
You guys didn't like it?
Now I'm realizing the reason why I have this movie is because we must have watched it in one of our band movie nights, and then we named a song after it in our improvised electronic band, and then I bought a copy of this to play during shows. It had so much classic moment after classic moment, and something you could just roll in the background. And that's why I have it. It's not because I was like, ooh, I really need a copy of New Centurions. And now I'm realizing, oh, what is it that resonated about it? And it's how many people are in it and all the stereotypical things. It's just packed full.
There's a very siesta aspect to it.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah, I think
all-star cast.
Did we mention Eric Estrada?
And Quincy Jones did the
Jones
music.
did the music. It is kind of similar
Yeah.
to Siesta in that way, where it's that was right at the. It's like and Miles Davis and Quincy Jones. Oh my gosh! It was just like
If I watch all these 70s movies, I'm just going to find them all great. I'm just going to think they're all great just because even their flaws are amazing. And I do seriously think that all those scenes with the sex workers, I'm not sure what the right term is now. What do we call
I don't know.
the oldest profession? What do you call them, Rick, when you're out there on the streets?
What did they call that wagon when I'm driving the what
wagon?
They called it. Did they call it that? What did
No,
they
I
call
call it the meat
Yeah,
wagon.
the cops had a name for George C. Scott had a name for the wagon. That's the thing about this movie is watching it and I was like, is this in San Francisco? Because of how they are in every ancient part of Los Angeles, dirty, awful, and I'm trying to think of another movie. It looks totally like New York movies from this era, right?
Right.
There are very few movies, even TV shows, like when you watch those Los Angeles cop shows from the 70s, LA still looks a little grimy, but it still looks nice. And this movie, wow, it's really awful. Like they found the worst parts of Los Angeles, like 100-year-old buildings at the time, right? Mm-hmm. Even some of the grimiest LA movies, it always looks a little too clean to me.
They were downtown, right?
Yeah.
And what did he say? Were they in South Central? Because Eric Estrada had that line where it was like, I was trying to get out of South Central. And he's like, now you're back in South Central. Is that what he said?
Right.
Wasn't it South Central?
East.
Oh, East LA. Is that what it was?
Yeah,
East
I
LA.
think.
But yeah, I mean, I think LA downtown gets pretty gritty.
This is the grittiest LA I've seen. I mean, I understand that LA is gritty, but even when I think about, and even, more contemporary movies, the grittiness feels a little clean, or I think it's the Michael Mann effect, but this early 70s, it looked on the level of the early 70s New York.
So it harkens back to Crank 2 a little bit, because Crank 2 did a great job of making LA look really dirty and...
But it's and maybe it's because of so many night shots in this film. Because Crank 2, when we were watching it, it's still sunny, and that's the thing, I guess, which is like the super high noon kind of gritty Los Angeles. It doesn't feel quite right to me. Whereas the nighttime old building Los Angeles that this had, it seemed different, darker, grimier, more seedy.
So it sounds like I like this film more than you two. Jim, did you like it?
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, it seems some of the dialogue was hammy, and, George C. Scott was good. But even for him, it was a little pushing it, or he was trying hard to get something out of it, but some of the dialogue was pretty bad.
So now we've seen, 3 George C. Scott movies? He's showing up a lot, right? So he was in...
Exorcist 3, They Might Be Giants.
Yes. And then this one. The understanding that he was typically a few sheets to the wind all the time, I'm starting to watch him and trying to figure out how he's doing everything.
The time jumps in this film were a little distracting.
Yeah.
The film will, even in the blink of an eye, you'll see a scene where Stacy Keach walks out the door of the precinct, maybe in a suit as a plainclothes cop, and then the next shot is him coming down the stairs into the hallway that he just left from in a policeman's office uniform, and you're like, and with a different mustache or something, you're like, wow, okay. I mean, I didn't get confused by the time jumps once I realized he was moving, but it almost felt like he was moving faster and faster every time it would jump. Yeah,
the time jumps, and I'm trying to figure out why in other films there are time jumps. That's one would say that is a predominant feature of most films.
Pretty much every scene, they jump some amount of time.
It's always jumping time, right? But these time jumps, for some reason, I felt like they weren't signaled that well, except for the mustache. When he has the mustache, that helped, and then the mustache is gone again, and it's like, okay, another time jump. I couldn't tell if it was just badly done or if it was an intentional kind of arty move, and I guess it must have been an intentional arty move.
Yeah, I got the sense that it was artfully done because every time it happened, I was like a little disoriented, but then was fine. It wasn't like completely disorienting. So 60% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and 63 from the audience, and the reviews were murky. They liked the acting, but they didn't like the story. They felt the film left a bad taste in the critics' mouths. It did leave something to be desired. It kind of lingered a little too long, and
I started thinking, like, how long is this movie? Yeah, it was kind of dragging. How long was it?
An hour and 43 minutes is what this says.
Yeah, it seemed longer.
It seemed longer. It's because they packed in the plots
By the end, the
Yeah.
last.
And maybe that's because George C. Scott leaves.
Right, that's pretty early. I was thinking
Yeah.
that would, because I remember that from watching this, or I knew it was like, okay, somebody, cliché, spoiler, this is,
Yeah.
that he shoots himself, and I definitely remember that, or I wasn't sure. It was like, I remember someone, was it Stacy Keach or him, and I thought that was towards the end, and then it went on for another 30 minutes.
Yeah, and then I thought it was Scott Wilson. Initially I was like, okay, somebody does kill themselves, but it's like, oh, it's Scott Wilson, and then it's like, oh no, it's this. Ooh, I just looked and it said Robert Towne is an uncredited screenwriter on this film.
there was one writer credited in the credits. There were 3 writers in IMDb. Sterling Siliphant, who was the person credited in the credits, I think, and he did The Killer Elite, Peck and Paw movie, The Towering Inferno, Shaft in Africa, The Poseidon Adventure, Charlie, based on Flowers for Algernon, which was always sitting on the shelf at Showtime Video right by the door, and In the Heat of the Night. And then the second writer was Joseph Wambaugh, who wrote a lot of police-oriented TV shows. And then Robert Towne, of course, Chinatown, The Last Detail, the first 2 Mission Impossible movies, The Firm, Days of Thunder, a lot of Tom Cruise movies, Frantic, Heaven Can Wait, Orca, Shampoo, McCabe, and Mrs. Miller, Bonnie and Clyde.
Did you mention Chinatown?
Are you kidding? I did say Chinatown.
Wamba also, The Onion Field. I don't know if you remember that movie. That's
Oh, right.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's based off of one of his books.
Some pretty good writers, but clearly, since there was one credited in the credits, maybe these other 2 punched it up, and that's how it got a little kind of moved out all over the place. The director,
Crazy.
Yeah.
Richard Fleischer.
Yeah.
His dad and uncle are the Fleischer brothers, right?
Is he the Fleischer related to them? Okay.
I wasn't sure if it was true or not. Yeah, it says it on IMDb, so.
That's what I thought, but then I didn't see it in his bio, and I was like, is he the one that was the Fleischer kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so.
That's cool.
And he did what I wrote down, Soylent Green,
Yeah.
Tora. Remember that was like a
Oh, yeah.
on TV all the time in the 70s there.
And also played at the Village.
Summer movies.
Yeah, summer. What was it called? Village Hall.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea he did.
Yeah, I watched that a while ago. I hadn't watched. I think that's what I watched when my family got Disney Plus. I watched 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea because I hadn't seen that in so long. Another movie. I always talk about movies that horrified me as a child. That beak in the squid in
Yeah.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so obsessed with that ride. My family used to go to Disney World every Christmas because my uncle would win the Salesman of the Year award, and it was a cabana at Disney World, multi-bedroom cabana
Wow.
at Disney World, so we all had our own bedrooms. It was back when they had tickets. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was an e-ticket ride, and I was just absolutely I loved those submarines.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be underwater. Of course, I didn't know they didn't really go underwater. And then when the squid would attack the submarine, I was just fascinated with that.
What did your uncle sell?
I think it was wires.
Wires.
Yeah. It's just totally like I've just started, you know how I have this policy that if somebody mentions a movie that I haven't seen, I just go watch it. So today I was watching something and somebody mentioned Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and I'd never seen it, so I started watching it. And he sells the rings on shower curtains. shower curtain
Right.
rings.
And he has like the little display, right?
Right,
Yeah.
So yeah, my uncle sold wires, I think, for Leicester. Place was called Leicester Sales. Soylent Green. There's a touch point between the two of you. That's what you used to put on your rider, correct?
That's true. Yeah, we had Soylent Green on the writer. I think I wanted to do that in this podcast one season, way back in the early seasons. I wanted to do. I always loved the Charlton Heston trilogy, Apocalypse trilogy. You got your Planet of the Apes, Omega Man, and Soylent Green.
All of which I watched during the global viral event because I had never seen two of those.
Yeah.
So he did some stinkers too. Conan the Destroyer, Red Sonja, the Neil Diamond version of the Jazz Singer,
Oh, yeah.
and Amityville 3D. Actually in that Jazz Singer, I think Neil Diamond is in blackface.
No, is that
think he
true?
is, yeah,
No.
isn't he?
I mean, that's what happens with Al Jolson. Does he really do the same thing?
I think so, because I
You're
think
kidding, really?
I should check. How does it know I'm looking up Neil Diamond? My phone is listening to me. All I typed was Neil.
Well, what other Neil would you be looking up? Neil deGrasse Tyson? Neil Armstrong? I don't think so. I think if I were your phone, I'd say if it was Neil, and then I would autocomplete to Diamond.
Neil Diamond's blackface Jazz Singer embarrassment.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
That's too bad. Neil should have known better. 1980. Come on.
Fleischer, regardless, he was an extremely diverse and capable director, and that's what he was known as. And a lot of big-time actors, including guests, liked to work with him because of how good he was at making big films. He was kind of a journeyman director, not an auteur. Oh, there's another touch point between you two and this film. Guess where Fleischer graduated from? He graduated from 2 Ivy League schools, undergrad and postgrad.
Well, Jim went to Harvard and I went to Yale, so I guess that covers those, right? MIT?
You know what I'm talking about.
MIT? Both of us spent some time at MIT.
What did you guess, Jim?
Brown.
Correct. He went to Brown undergrad, and then he was Yale grad.
And Eli, as I know from my crossword puzzle work.
Eli.
Crossword puzzle
land.
world.
Yeah.
It's always someone
Ivy Leaguer. And then it's Eli.
who goes to Yale, right? It's
Yeah.
Yale, yeah.
I had no idea.
Because is that his first name? Is
Eli.
it Eli
Yeah.
Yale?
Yeah, it's on the same level as like a person who imitates another person, aper, apes, which is a word I've never heard outside the world of crossword puzzles.
Oh, you've never heard the term of aping someone?
I have through a crossword puzzle. I feel like I've never heard anyone say that in,
I've used
in
that
the real
term.
world. Okay,
I've said
well,
it, aped. Aping.
you're also wearing spats and a cravat.
I don't know what either of those things are. The movie made $7.5 million in its day, which is about $18 million today. And the budget was $200,000, which was about $1.5 million today.
Well,
So
cheap film.
a hit.
Yeah.
Cheap film and a hit.
How much of that did George C. Scott get then?
Well, they spent $0.5 million on Cuddy Sark.
Kansas City. Food-wise, once only known as a barbecue town. But thanks to the Taco the Town podcast, everything has changed. Kansas City has rightfully taken its place as a taco paradise, smack dab in the middle of the USA. And all of these tacos belong to us on the Taco the Town podcast. My name is W. David Keith, certified tacoholic, and I live a very taco-centric lifestyle. On the Taco the Town podcast, we're tasting every taco in the town. We shine a light on all of the taco-rific tacos Kansas City has to offer, unearthing great taco memories, checking the latest stories in taco news, and interviewing actors, reporters, chefs, politicians, and musicians about their love for tacos. If you love tacos like I do, you're gonna love Taco the Town. Available wherever you get your taco podcasts. A proud member of the Lotus Pod Podcasting Network.
But yeah, I liked it. You guys didn't like it. I liked it.
It's okay. It was an entertaining romp through the stereotypes.
You don't think this was an influential film and that these tropes have been picked up from this film? You don't think that if you went and talked to Walter Hill and said, hey, have you ever seen the new Centurions? He'd say, yeah, where do you think I got the Black Russian for Eddie Murphy in 48 Hours?
Yeah, well, I think it's obvious that its tendrils have worked its way through the 70s. So yeah, just seeing James B. Sicking, seeing Eric Estrada, literal connections to 70s and 80s cop shows, right? Yeah, I think it's it probably was established that. Yeah, because it's before Serpico.
Pre-cruising, and there was a little cruising moment in it.
French Connection even, right? It's
Yep.
a little before that, isn't it? Or right around the same time. So it's, I think it was definitely. I'm sure it was influential.
What brought you to it, though? Like, why did you just were watching it?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't either. Maybe it's just like an obsessive George C. Scott kind of going through his
After watching,
They Might Be
They Might-
Giants
yeah,
and
you were into-
Exorcist 3.
yeah, it was around that time when
yeah,
it just became a
yeah.
thing. Oh, let's start renting all the George C. Scott movies.
Didn't want to watch Firestarter, so it was like, let's watch New Centurions.
Was he in Firestarter?
What kind of question is that, Chris?
I just missed that one. I skipped Firestarter.
See, I'm just going to name movies that now, if you've got this new policy, anytime somebody mentions a
I'm
movie,
not
I'm going to watch
watching
it. You're not watching
Firestarter.
Firestarter?
Actually, that's a perfect example that I should now watch Firestarter.
Yeah, exactly. You said, I'm not watching it.
Because that random curation makes me watch movies that I don't necessarily think are great, but I always think there's something to learn from every movie you watch.
I've got the vinyl of that, the soundtrack, Firestarter.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Why?
Is that Tangerine
It's
Dream?
Tangerine Dream, yeah. I just was buying every Tangerine Dream movie record I could find at that period of time. I probably bought that before I'd actually seen the movie.
What is the best Tangerine Dream soundtrack?
Probably Thief.
Sorcerer.
Yeah, Sorcerer's good too.
Oh, yeah.
That story that William Friedkin, horrible racist, sorry, speaking ill of the dead, he tells the whole story about how he found Tangerine Dream wandering around Germany, or somebody said, you got to go to this party or something, and they took him to a castle, and he saw Tangerine Dream playing for like 5 hours in this castle in the middle of the night somewhere, and I think he's responsible for Tangerine Dream, soundtrack career. William
Yeah.
Friedkin going to
Really?
that concert in a castle in Bavaria.
But he was bemoaning, right, on a commentary track or something?
It's Michael Mann.
Oh, Michael
on,
Mann.
on the Thief
Yeah.
commentary track. It's
like,
like
oh,
just
God,
right at the
these
beginning.
guys.
Yeah, him and James Caan. Like, it's actually a great commentary track because it's like two angry old men, Michael Mann and James Caan, like griping through a whole movie. And it's like, yeah, right when in the credits, it's like right when Tangerine Dream comes up, it's like, oh, yeah, Michael Mann's just like, oh, those assholes or something. He's just like, oh. Just like, what a pain. I can't remember what he says, but it's great.
I love Tangerine Dream.
Well, yeah, it's not to say that it's entirely possible that Michael Mann's, difficult.
And I like Friedkin films, too.
Yeah.
I know that he's a troublesome figure in history. I heard your was it Triumph of the Will story or something, or
Yeah, he's talking about the other one.
Birth of a Nation?
Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about it in the film studies way, and then going off and actually endorsing the ideas within the film. It's just like, oh, come on.
Friedkin.
Friedkin.
There's a good WTF with Friedkin, good interview of Friedkin.
I feel like listen to that.
He stays away from the anti-Semitic comments with Mark Maron, which is good. Just the second time I just accused him of being anti-Semitic. Your example was Birth of the Nation, which is racist, not anti-Semitic.
Yeah, give the guy a break, Chris. Cut him some slack.
Well, I just want to properly represent his bigotry and or racism.
Bigotry, yeah.
Let's play a little game of how much older. So I am in my 54th year of life, so we'll just say 54 years old, even though...
Is that how we say it? So when someone's in their 54th year of life, let me get it straight. So when you're in your 54th year of life, what traditionally we say is that you're 54 years old.
Well, no, I mean, because I'm 53, but I'm in my 54th year of life.
But you want us to consider you to be 54.
For the game. Let's
the
consider,
game,
because
you're 54.
I'm more
Okay.
54 than I am 53. Is that true? Yeah, we'll just
So
say that's true.
maybe you just say you're 53 and a half?
No,
50
that just makes things...
53 and 3/4?
Let's not do hard math. Let's say I feel 58, so we'll just say 54. We'll round up.
53 going on 54?
So Clifton James... How much older am I than Clifton James in this film?
By asking that question, you're saying that you are
This
older
is not
than
a trick
him.
question.
You are older.
I am older.
Wow.
54 years is older than Clifton James in this film.
Cigar chomping Southern sheriff character actor.
I say 9 years.
Wow.
Wow, thanks, Jim. Rick?
He's, really baby-faced.
I'll just guess that he's 50 in this movie.
He's 52.
Oh,
so 2
okay,
years.
so it's not
Yeah.
that.
Pretty close. Stacy Keach. How much older than Stacy Keach in this film.
That I'll say 9 years.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thanks, Jim.
No, Stacy Keach is. I'm gonna guess he's 36.
He's 31.
Ooh, wow.
23
He
years.
did look really
older.
young. I mean, looking
Yeah.
at his eyes, his weird, dreamy, snaky kind of eyes. He's got really strange eyes, doesn't he?
He's very attractive in this film.
But yeah, weird though. Like, uncomfortable, attractive.
Easy on the eyes. Like he's trying to take you to bed.
I felt more like, I guess maybe that's it. Yeah, snake-like.
So he was only 6 years older than my daughter in this film. And then George C. Scott.
Yeah.
How much younger is George C. Scott than I am?
So he is younger. He's
Yeah.
not around the same age.
Yeah.
Well,
And he retires. He's a retired grandpa. in
but
this
it's
film.
cop. You do your 20 years.
That's
so you'd be.
That's true.
Well, I'm gonna say he's 50 in this.
Yeah, I'll say 49.
45.
Wow, that was like a Price is Right move, right?
Yeah.
Going $1
Yeah.
below.
Okay, so you guys are kind of down on this movie. Should this film be lost, Jim?
No, of course not. I don't think it's like a must watch, but if it's on, it's a curiosity, and it's like you said, it's one of these movies. It's that guy movie. Is that what did you say?
Yeah, that guy movie.
Yeah, where it's just if you watched a lot of TV in the 70s or 80s and stuff, it's like and do we mention there's TC? TC is in it.
Yeah, we said TC.
we
What
What
mentioned
about
that.
Eric Estrada?
Eric
Do we-
Estrada? Do we mention Estrada? So it's entertaining for that, but it's kind of a bummer of a movie. Which is fine, hey.
The more I think about it, and it's also like, wow, like, has anything changed? Like, I keep going back and forth. It's like, oh, yeah, the world, lots of bad stuff is happening, but there has been progress. And then I watch this movie, and it's like, all that's changed is like the portrayal of the way African Americans are treated by the police in Los Angeles. All that's changed is the way the African Americans react in those situations in the movie, but it's still... like it's all these oppressive, terrible interactions going on, and in this movie, it's still.
Well, it seems, and this is saying something. It seems like they are really candy coating how African Americans are treated. Like, not only are they benevolent about the way they're being treated, but it's let's put them in the wagon, drive them around the block, get them drunk, buy them some scotch and milk, get them drunk, and then drop them off on 8th Street. And off they go. Like, that's not what was going on in Los Angeles. And he even, one of the main character falls in love with a black woman. Like I said, it was probably progressive for its day.
Yeah.
To have that as a lead couple. So it was actually pretty kind. It showed police officers to be fair, except for the guy that shot an innocent man. But that was also shown to be an incredibly heavy mistake.
Yeah.
For the most part, it showed George C. Scott as the guy's like, look, I know these streets. These are the bad people, and these are the people who are just trying to get by.
Right.
Let's not hassle the people who are just trying to get by in an unfair way.
Yeah.
And that's, not how it was, I don't think, from when I glean.
Although, yeah, and you could say maybe that the police state situation in Los Angeles really started getting worse and worse as the 80s progressed. So maybe Los Angeles, I don't think that's true. This is like all urban centers in the United States. There were problems before the 1980s.
Well, it's just like everything in this country. There was a beautiful, harmonious blend of race in the very beginning, and then it got ugly.
Right.
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's not how
it
happened.
Oh.
I was just listening to an old episode where I talk about the military, and I'm kind of go off on that a little bit and sort of how I shaped my opinion of the military. My cousin, who just passed away, was married to a police officer in West Palm, not West Palm Beach, but West Palm, and it was he was an officer there at the time when it was had the highest murder rate per capita of any city in the country. So it was a really bad environment, and so when I would go visit them and stay with them in the summer, I spent weeks hanging out with police officers from West Palm. This film reminded me of that. When they talk about talking shop, and there was some term that they used. Oh, stay frosty. I was like, wait, that term is that old? I thought, I thought that was like an 80s term. I think what the film was trying to get across is that it's a very complex thing to be a police officer, and it's a very disturbing thing to be a police officer, and it's very difficult to do your job well and then also have, I guess, stay balanced in the job and then also come home and be a decent human being who doesn't have their own vices. And I sort of saw the good and the bad of that with my cousin and now her ex-husband, who was also not doing well health-wise. But, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know where I stand on police officers. I just know that job, I think, what this film was trying to get across is that it is an enormous psychological weight that I think police officers have on them, and it affects them all in different ways. And even if they kind of get through it and can kind of process the job, they also deal with life and death every day. So I did get that out of the film. I think that's what it was trying to say, but it was very clumsily stated.
Yeah, they're trying to work that out because it's even now I feel like it falls back to the good cop bad cop thing, where it's like, oh, you have one or the other. And yeah, you're right. They're trying to show a nuanced sort of view of the police, not this kind of black and white portrayal. And that to me is evolving from the Dragnet Adam 12 heroic portrayal, and this is more human, and saying that like you said, there's a emotional impact in the job, obviously. And it's that's the thing, is like, oh, it's obvious now. We all know that because we've seen tons of TV shows and movies all about that, right? But this is where they're first working out that new kind of narrative or new approach to looking at police officers in that way.
And I don't know if you noticed, but Eric Estrada is in this film, and he plays somebody who, in that scene where he busts a bunch of people who are Latino and potentially from his neighborhood or where he grew up, and they joke about, he could have been on either end of those transactions, and he kind of loses his shit and then smashes their car. I think that monologue he sets up earlier about how you could have busted me, any other day. And then him busting those kids and then smashing up their car, I guess maybe I'm reading way too much into it, but I felt like angst he was feeling having to chase down and lose one of these guys that he really wanted to bust, and at the same time realize these are my people. I was essentially chasing myself 20 years ago or whatever. I feel like when he smashed up the car, that was part of his internal thing.
And so that's yet another narrative that's packed into this cop narrative, right? It's the guy from the neighborhood who's now a cop, and then dealing with all that, and also him being, when the chief or whatever was inspecting everyone and looked at him and he was perfect, right? The chief didn't have any complaints, and it's like, oh, that's also that narrative of having to be better, 10 times better in order to survive in that environment. So I think that narrative's in there too. So I think that character is totally working out that narrative. And that's the thing, is like, this film has all those narratives in it, but it's like, that's too much, right? You have movies about each one of these little moments or characters, their little character arcs. There are other films that are about each one of those. So it is. They're packing everything in.
Speaking of the Louvre earlier, it reminds me of the Raft of the Medusa. Like, it's so big and so much to take in when you see it in real life or maybe it's a bad example, or Guernica or something, those huge paintings that have so much going on in them that literally it takes you a long time to just focus on components of it. That's what this film kind of seemed like to me, is like, it's this massive, sprawling piece of art that you have to kind of look at and pick apart over time. I'm giving this film a lot of credit now.
Well, but if you think about it, and Jim, you were saying, oh, this seems longer than it seemed longer than it was, and then it's like thinking about movies like Heat or something like that, where they're 3 hours, and that's like, oh, that's how you do it. It's like, if you have this kind of complex narrative and all these separate arcs, you kind of have to do it on a more epic level.
Epic is the right answer, and like, I was just thinking about when what's-her-name slits her wrists, and I'm like, why is this in Heat?
Oh, right.
I forget her name. Black Swan.
Oh, wow. It's Natalie Portman. Yeah, the daughter. Yeah, that's a sprawling movie, too. This reminds me, though, also the one thing we didn't talk about is the producers, Chartoff Winkler. So those are the producers who did Rocky and Raging Bull and The Right Stuff. So, I mean, the Chartoff Winkler kind of history of making these gritty, big films.
Should this film be rewound, would you watch this film again, Jim?
Not for a while.
It would be interesting to see it like actually restored and, see how it looks.
Yeah, we saw a crummy rental copy of it here.
Yeah, realizing now how important cinematography is to me, and then VHS, and I could see that it was well shot. Although I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah.
And looking up the cinematographer who died when he was 104. So like ancient cinematographer guy did a lot of TV also. And so it's like films like Soylent Green feels like it's a TV crew, those early 70s where there's a lot of overlap between the TV look and the film. I'd be curious to see what this film looks like cleaned up, if it looks better or if it's just, if the problem was the VHS or if it's just a little too
TV.
It reminded me of movies, and there are a couple scenes where it's like, I feel like I've seen this scene of stuff that would show on like the CBS late night movie. And I was glad that we stretched it so that we could watch it non-squished. I didn't mind watching it that way, but yeah, it definitely had that TV movie look to it. And I did like that they shot everything at night with lighting.
Yeah.
The transfer doesn't do that justice, because I'm sure that all those rich blacks, the impact of the spotlights and stuff had a lot more effect when you're watching it clean on film.
When it comes up on Tubi, we'll see what the transfer looks like.
The Tubi transfer will be flawless.
Because that's what they're all about. They're about investing a huge amount of money in obscure films and getting them restored from the original print.
They do have a lot of obscure films. Like if there's a film that I'm looking for, it's typically on Tubi. Like if it's a weird esoteric movie, because they're just gobbling up anything that nobody wants.
Content, yeah.
Would you rewind it? Will you watch it again, Rick?
If I was to watch it again, I'd need to not see it on tape. So I wouldn't rewind it. I would stream it.
Well, Tubi, it's free. Should this be found, would you recommend this to somebody at the grocery store?
If it was in like the 99-cent bin. Do you have a DVD player still? Look at this film down here, New Centurions. You should buy this. I'm at the Walmart and the 99-cent DVD bin. Do they still have that?
Do you think this film ever got to DVD?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, there's probably a certain amount of films that just never made the jump. Now they're on streaming.
Would I recommend it to someone?
Yeah, a student or a coworker.
Like if I was talking to a student and they said, you know who's an interesting actor? This guy. Have you ever seen Walking Dead season 3, The Old Man on the Farm? That season where they're just got this old man on the farm for I don't know how many episodes. And I'm like, yeah, Scott Wilson. Oh, you should see this movie New Centurions. He's in that. Scott Wilson, I need to know more about him. I need to know what happens, because he's always an interesting presence on screen. Why was he not on the screen more? Or I guess he was. It's just he wasn't in movies. Yeah, he's only in a few good movies.
In Cold Blood.
Yeah.
He's great in that. And that was probably one of his first movies, right?
Yeah, so that's probably what happened is he's got that kind of like first time, or he just kind of hit it out of the park in that movie and couldn't get beyond that character, right?
Well, let's not forget that there was, at one point, a huge divide between people who could work in film and people who could work on TV. Now it's everybody from film wants to work on TV.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case back in the day. So you had career television actors.
But I don't think Scott Wilson was on TV that much. He's like, what's his name? The crazy guy who shows up in like 70s TV shows but is in like The Killing, and Timothy Carey.
Oh, yeah.
Character actor. Yeah, Elisha Cook Jr. I just saw him in something again. I think it was a $6 Million Man episode. Or no, he was in a Bionic Woman episode, like Elisha Cook Jr. showing up. I felt like Scott Wilson didn't, and well, he's later. Was younger than those guys, but I feel like Scott Wilson didn't show up in much TV.
Look, he was just very particular about what he did in his career. I'm sure if we look at his credits, it'll be like Stacy Keach, where he's got 5 things every year that he did for 60 years.
I'm confusing my William Peter Blatty movies. I think we've got an I Apologize in the same episode. I'm confusing The Keep and Ninth Configuration. So I'm sorry, everyone. Somebody's yelling at their
And if you are yelling,
iPod.
We'd like to know who you are. So you can write us at lostfoundrewound@gmail.com. Oh, by the way, our listenership is going back up.
Great.
Good.
So thank you, folks, for listening. We
Yes.
appreciate it.
Michael Mann directed The Keep, and then William Peter Blatty directed The Ninth Configuration. So that's why I'm getting all confused. Sorry, everybody. Can't keep straight my obscure early 80s films by famous people.
I don't know if you guys caught this, but Rick's struggling to keep things straight. Just to give you a little inside baseball, we're all joking about having dementia. And by joking, I mean we're going to the doctor and getting tested.
How's that going, Chris? How did you get any good results?
I forgot to get tested. No, I got my cardioid exam or whatever the hell that is. I got that done. The neurologist is booked till February.
Oh, I hate that.
So,
yeah,
it's going to take a while to figure out if I'm crazy.
You may not be christening by February, right? It's
I'll be George C. Scott.
Why am I here? Who are you? What results? February.
That'll be bliss, right?
Right.
I mean, I can't wait.
It's the in-between time. That's the problem, is that transitional state.
Right. Yeah, where you're like,
you're half there.
Yeah, I can still remember the stress, but now I'm stressed about forgetting the stress.
Yeah.
Just need to forget. It's great to be with you guys in your childhood home. We'll see you for the next movie.
Farewell.
Centurions.
What does he say at the end?
I'm dying.
No, but he said something else. He says something a little too poetic.
Yeah, why? Yeah, because he had finally figured it out.
Yeah, I figured it all out.
They really read the whole last scene to us in addition to showing us. What was it? What you said, Rick, is show and tell.
Show and tell was the rule of this film. It's like you see something and then he would later explain what had just happened.
And that's a sign of a good script.
Yeah.
Show and tell.
Do both.
That's like the equivalent of writing a term paper and leaving big spaces. It's like do the scene, and then you have the next scene. It's just the dialogue of people describing the previous scene. So you're right there. You've doubled the pages. And you're finished with the script in half the time.
130-page script, and you've basically just written 75 pages of content.
Could have been a tight 60. Could have been an episode of Dragnet.
A very special episode of Dragnet.
A very progressive episode of Dragnet where Harry Morgan has an interracial relationship. Was he on Dragnet?
Yeah, Harry Morgan, was later. Early and then later, right? I think are there two Harry Morgan eras? I can't remember. He's definitely in Dragnet the 1960s Dragnets. He's in the hippie episodes and stuff. The ones like where the hippies smoke pot and their baby drowns. And then at the end, Jack Webb.
Train spotting?
No, yeah, it's like train spotting. Jack Webb crushes a bag of pot.
All right. Thanks, guys. You guys got to start your slumber party, and I got to go to bed.
Yeah, I got to get my Dr. Denton's on.
Lost and Found and Rewound is fully funded by Lost and Found and Rewound Foundation funds. Lost and Found and Rewound does not use crowdfunding because our listeners have better things to do with their funding. There's no need to post reviews of Lost and Found and Rewound because our listeners have more valuable things to do with their time. In all sincerity, thank you for listening to the show. We truly appreciate it.
Lotus Pod.